Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited you could be here. So today we're talking about a favorite topic of mine, which is private money. We're really talking about creative deal structuring and what you should be working on and thinking about to be able to tap into investors that can actually help fund your business. And I mean, we've got the man on the topic today because with us is a pro snowboarder, former pro snowboarder, and America's #1 money mentor, Chris Naugle. Now, Chris has actually built his career on the belief that success is about the resources you have, but not about the resources you have, but how resourceful you can actually be. And his journey from humble beginnings to financial success has actually fueled his mission to teach others a better way to preserve wealth. So over the years, Chris has built and owned 19 different companies with features in Forbes, ABC, also House Hunters, and even his own HGTV pilot in 2018. He is founder of the Money School and also serves as the money mentor for the Money Multiplier as well, where he empowers entrepreneurs, business owners, and real estate investors with the knowledge of how money truly works. Now, his experience extends to managing tens of millions of dollars in assets across financial services and real estate as well. And as an innovator, a speaker, an author, and a podcast host, Chris actually has shared his wealth building strategies with tens of thousands of Americans nationwide. His teachings actually continue to inspire those seeking lasting financial freedom and a path to creating true generational wealth. Chris, man, you've done a lot of stuff. Welcome to the show today.
Yeah, I've been at it for quite a while, man. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited you could actually be here. So what got you started on this road? I just out of curiosity.
What got me started off in snowboarding?
Yeah, I mean, in financial services. Have you always been in
financial services? Well, I didn't ever aspire to be in financial services or an advisor. It sort of just happened out of sheer necessity. Like you had mentioned, I was a pro snowboarder when I was, younger. And to be a pro snowboarder, you gotta have time, right? You got to travel, you got to go to events and all this stuff. And to have a regular job while being a pro snowboarder is really difficult. So I had to, in that journey to becoming pro, I had to figure some things out, which meant I became an entrepreneur at a very young age. I created a clothing line at 16 that turned into a chain of snowboard shops that I started up when I was 18 years old. And then from there, I was living the dream until I wasn't. And, it's kind of a perfect timing to talk about this. It would have been back early 2000s that things were just cruising, man. I was traveling the world. I was ranking in the snowboarding industry, and I had my skateboard shops. I had 3 of these shops, skateboard, snowboard shops, and I was living almost in just a perfect dream until the dot-com recession hit. And I'll never forget, I was driving down the thruway and I heard about a plane hitting a tower, then another, and we all know that to be 9/11. And following that, was just a very long recession, the dot-com recession, and I got wrapped up in that, and my business tanked, and I needed a job. I just needed money somewhere, so I put my resume out, which wasn't impressive. I remember I was a pro snowboarder and an entrepreneur, and that's about it. It fit on one page. Barely any schooling, no real accolades to put behind my name. And when I put my resume out, the only places that responded were Wall Street firms. Now, I knew nothing about Wall Street except for the movie Wall Street. So I rewatched that movie a couple times, interviewed, got hired, and that was it. That's what thrust me into the financial world and the Wall Street world. And that would have been 2003 when I entered that world. And boy, it shook things up. It changed things a lot for me. But that's how I got into the money game.
So what were you doing on Wall Street, out of curiosity?
I was a financial advisor, and then, I started off just as a regular financial services professional like most do, learned the ropes. Then I went to the RIA side of the firm. I was with a huge New York City firm. I mean, just 100-plus-year-old company. And I was unique because I really wanted to be in the investment side of the business. And what was happening is that company was developing an RIA. It was relatively new back then. This is early 2000s. And I was chosen, because you had to be chosen to basically be part of this, I don't want to call it a pilot, but this RIA that they were doing. And that got me into the AUM side of the business, the money management side. And from there, I kind of just went all over the place. I was working with a lot of hedge funds. I was working with lots of the fund managers and the dark pools. So I was doing some fun stuff, but also seeing a lot of things that at that time I sort of just, blinders on. But today when I look back, I'm like, wow, I could have kind of predicted some of the things that had happened, like the Great Recession and that, because of what I saw, because I was so deep into it. It was a really interesting 16 years that I spent in that industry. I still was a pro snowboarder during that. So there's a lot of crossovers, Ty. I was a pro snowboarder. I had my retail stores, but now I'm a Wall Street guy. But something unique happened during that time is I went from working in my stores every day, just like a lot of entrepreneurs, they get stuck in their business, and I was, to now I was thrust out of my business. Now I'm working on my business. And the funny thing happened is after that recession, my business took off. And it didn't take off because of my efforts in the store. It took off because the people I hired and the things we did and the ability for me to work on the business instead of in it while I was out there doing the Wall Street thing, making great money doing that. And I was doing all these things simultaneously for the better part of a decade. And that's also how I got into real estate during that period of time.
So what kind of things did you do in real estate? Because you were on HGTV, like you had your own show launch
Yeah.
here. So
That's an easy story. So it would have been 2006. I had a wealthy client that I managed a very small amount of money for him. And I was always upset because I knew how much money he had. And he gave me like slivers, like literally breadcrumbs of his net worth. And I'm like, dude, like I've proven to you I can do, good things with your money. Why don't you give me more? And he says, listen, I said, it's nothing against you. He says, I'm in real estate. I can make way more money doing real estate than you could ever make me. And I don't really understand stocks, bonds, but I understand real estate. And he just kind of spent some time with me. He wouldn't call him a mentor, but he spent time helping me understand the real estate industry. And he said, you should really give it a shot. So I did. Why not? So in 2006, I did my first flip. 2007, did another one. In 2008, I bought a dilapidated paint store 2 buildings down from where my main Fat Man Board Shops location was. And that's when I almost went bankrupt in the Great Recession because I was deep into this development project, deep into private or hard money, actually bad money. And I only made it through it because my girlfriend, who just moved into my house, literally started paying all the household bills so that I could focus on getting this plaza done, making the payments. And then, listen, sometimes you gotta have faith and understand that there's a higher power. And literally I had a miracle happen where a bank that never should have funded my deal as a takeout deal that did. And I got just a lot of things just lined up at exactly the right time. And I was able to get out of that before I went bankrupt.
did you stay in real estate or get out of real estate after that?
Yeah, yeah, I did. So I was a financial advisor, but I always loved Warren Buffett, and he always said buy low, sell high. So in 2009, after the thick and thin of the Great Recession kind of had come and we'd settled down a little bit, what I started doing is I started going out looking for apartment buildings. They were so cheap. I mean, in Buffalo, which is where I'm from, there were areas and pockets where you could buy. My first real estate acquisition of an apartment building was this 8-unit side-by-side row house. And it wasn't in a great part of town, but not terrible. And I bought this thing, and I know people are going to really not understand this number, but I bought that thing for 85 grand. And then I started using just what money and time I had on weekends to go in and renovate unit by unit. And then I was increasing rents double. Like the rents were like 300, when I bought it. It was definitely run down. And then I was getting them up to like $600 after just doing basic renovations that me and my friend Mike did. So that's it. I did that. And then I bought a 4-unit right down the road. And then I just kept going. And I got up, from 2009 to 14, I got up to 36 units. And then, I took my 37th unit to the bank. And the bank screwed me, and that's the only word I can use for it. But the bank, there's a lot I didn't know. And here's the thing you got to understand is sometimes when you get into an industry, you got to get to understand the industry. You got to get to understand how credit works, how banks work, what they look at. Now, this guy that was lending me money, he was the same guy that took me out of that strip mall with that refi. He was still lending me, but he would always say to me, hey, do you want to borrow and this is going to be right up your alley. Do you want to borrow in your personal name and the rate will be lower, or do you want to borrow in the entity name and the rate will be higher? I mean, I know nothing, right? So clearly I'm like, well, duh, I'll borrow in the personal name and it's cheaper, right? He's like, yep. So I kept doing that. 36 units later, I hit the debt to income wall. And there's no way around that. Okay. The bank froze my lines of credit, which they were absolutely essential at that present time for me to finish renovating. And I had no money, no liquidity. I could only put so much of my income into this real estate deal. And it just came to a head. And in 14, because of that bank literally calling that line of credit, I got behind and I had to go on literally just a rampant fire sale of all of those units. It's a hard thing to talk about because think about what those would be worth today. But nonetheless, it was the most important learning lesson I could have ever gone through. And right after that, I'm like, screw this buy and hold crap. I'm never going to go through that again. I'm going to just start flipping houses again. And then I started flipping. Me and she was my fiance at that time, my wife now. And we were just flipping and flipping and flipping. And we got this idea. We're like Tark and Christina. They're a cute couple. They got this really cool show called Flip or Flop. We had met them at a convention. And I'm like, we need our own TV show. Now, because of my pro snowboarding career and my retail stores, I knew videographers and I knew kind of how to make videos and movies. So we started putting together sizzle reels and started working on putting our own pilot together. It was a cool concept. It was kind of like Jackass meets Flip or Flop. I would bring all my skate team guys into the house. They would be the demo crew. And when they're demoing, they build ramps in the house and they'd be skateboarding. Super fun, but HGTV was like, that's a little bit much for our audience. What about just doing something that's just like husband, wife, and then maybe one crazy person? I'm like, yeah, Blair, this ex-pro snowboarder who is a good friend of mine. He's just a wild guy, but he's an artist and a contractor. And you guys can all put those three together. You have a really interesting human being. So he was like our co-host on the show. And we went through the process and, it's a long process getting a show on HGTV, and we got approved for the pilot. And we aired in 2018. We aired 6 times. The show name was Risky Builders. It was a really cool experience, but then, I was forced when we got the show to literally sell my financial practice because it's called an OBA, an outside business activity. And the compliance officer said, you can't have a national television show, flipping houses and still be a financial advisor. It's just a conflict. You can't do them both. So you got to decide. And I'm like, okay. So I sold my financial practice. Let's just call that burning the boat. So the, 300,000 or so in income I was doing well was gone. Just like that. I sold it. So I had a little income coming in, like 60 grand and residual from the sale plus a lump sum. And that was what I was using, to kind of stabilize ourselves until we really got this show off the ground. And then Discovery bought HGTV. Discovery said, we're not launching any new shows at this time. And we got nixed. That was it. One door, that door closed in our face, which led me down the path I'm on now.
So some of those things that you went through, what are some of the biggest takeaways and lessons that you got out?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's so many. So the first thing I will tell you, and if anyone ever follows any of my stuff, I'm all over social and YouTube, is the one thing I did right is just growing up with nothing, grow up in a very lower middle class family, but as a dreamer, I never quit. So even when I was a kid, like things wouldn't work or you'd be outside trying to build something. It's just not working. I just never quit. I was like a persistent, consistent little kid. And that carried through to my snowboarding years. I used the same mentality of just never quit, work harder than everybody else because you have to. From Buffalo, it's not exactly the mecca for pro snowboarders. And then my retail stores, just listen, like to get those stores open, my mom, who had nothing, put her house on the line because, banks want collateral. I was 17 when I was trying to open that first store. My mom put our house up as collateral so that I could get an SBA backed loan. So it wasn't an option to quit. It wasn't an option, period. So I always went through with all those things. So I think that single-handedly, just understanding that the only way to fail in life is to quit. That is one lesson I would pass on to your audience. The second lesson, and I think one of the more valuable ones, was if you're an entrepreneur and you've got a business and you're working in your business, please spend some time trying to figure out how you work on your business, not in your business. You cannot scale and grow a business and you'll never reach the levels you want if you get stuck working in the business because you become trapped. You become almost a slave of what you created. And when that happens, you almost don't know how to get out. You can't see your own way out. You're too far down the rabbit hole. And if it wasn't for the .com crash and the fact that I just needed a job, it wasn't like I wanted one, that I never would have learned how to work on my business. So I could give a lot more, but I think those two things, Never, ever quit, and be consistent and persistent, and get out of your business and working on your business as fast as you can. Those are probably the two greatest takeaways.
I love both of those. When you get out of real estate, where do you go next? What got you into the private money side?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, I mean, we were flipping 25 houses a month in the peak of it. So obviously that was all, I had to learn. Let me take you back, because this is going to fit right with what you do. In those early days, remember, the banks screwed me. So I had a black eye for banks. I didn't want to work with banks, although I had to, and we had a relationship with a community bank. But what I started doing is, early on in that flipping career, I mean, right back to the first time I got the idea of the show, I knew I was going to have to find capital. In all the trainings and everything, they always say, oh, find the deal and the money will follow, which is true, but there are some rules of engagement for that. So I just got really good at putting deals together, at showing how a deal basically would materialize, showing the current value, showing how we're going to bring value to the deal, showing the scope of work. And I put it together. And back then I called it the perfect loan proposal, because I just felt like it was perfect. And when I brought it to banks, they were just like, this is the best deal proposal I've ever seen. And how I learned that is, I'd done this with banks so many times. I just knew all the things a bank would ask for, right? So what happened is, I needed money. I got this one deal and I needed money to close in like 30 days. And I'm like, oh my God, I freaked. So I called every person I knew that had money. And when you are at these early stages, you think the people that you need to call are the people that drive the fancy car, live in the big house. And you know what I found? And I kind of knew this, but I found it out real quick. Those are the broke people. Those are the people that spent every penny on all those things that made them look wealthy. And the people that I started then talking to were the people that just, didn't look wealthy. They were just the normal people. And one of the unique things is, I just started saying, okay, these normal people, the millionaire next door, are the folks I need to find. And I started showing them the presentations, and I started learning how to borrow private money. And I got so good at this. This is a funny story. I got so good at borrowing private money that I had people begging me to lend on one of our deals. We had a great reputation. We'd never screwed anybody. Nobody had ever lost money. We were on a tear. Plus, we had the TV show, which people wanted to be part of. So I was like literally making dumb decisions in buying properties, that we probably should have walked away from, just because I had to put money somewhere. And let me fast forward a little bit. What ended up happening is, COVID hit. We had lots of properties, 91 rentals. We were still flipping houses. I had lots of relationships with private money, like literally lists. And I knew I was good at that. So I started teaching people this. And somebody had recommended that I write a book. They're like, you need to take all these ideas out of your head and put them into a book, which was my first book. This is, gosh, I don't even know how long ago this was, 10 years ago, probably, Private Money Guide. And it was literally a book of how private money works. And after I did that, I started teaching private money to people, like, hey, here's the way I did it. Here's how you do it. Here's the things you should do. If you meet with a borrower, here are the things you would say to them to completely blow their mind, to the point where they're like, holy crap, this person knows what they're doing. And they're just little things, like, tell them, like, listen, when the deal closes and your money gets released from escrow, what we're going to do is we're going to put it in a segregated bank account. We're going to give you access to view that account. I want you to be able to see your money anytime you want to see it. And then if you ever have questions about a withdrawal or a check, you just send us an email and we'll show you the receipts and everything where that money went. So now all of a sudden what you did is, you didn't disconnect people from their money. You made them part of the journey. And I was just teaching this, and literally it worked phenomenal, and it still does today. But I got to a point in COVID where I live in New York, and during COVID, man, just New York was the worst place to hold property. They literally told tenants, you don't have to pay rent and they can't kick you out. And that is the truth. So I just was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. My lenders were making more money than I was, because the interest they were charging. And I'm like, I want to be the bank. I don't want to be the guy operating. I don't want to be this guy because I'm miserable. I just want to be the bank, because the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. So what I did is I sold all those properties. I didn't fire sale them, because in COVID, like, we just caught the nice little rise up on price. So we got rid of them, and I had a nice chunk of change. And now all of a sudden I'm thinking, hey, this has got to be easy. I'm just going to start lending money. And I started trying to find people to lend money to, and they would bring me deals, and they would write an address down on a piece of paper and hand it to me. I remember this vividly. I was at a RIA, and I went up and I did my little 15 seconds of fame where I said, hey, I'm private lender. I want to lend money on deals. And after, this guy brings me this deal. He says, I got a deal. You want to lend on it? And I'm like, sure. Like, do you have a proposal? And he hands me an address on a piece of paper. And I'm like, dude, are you serious right now? He's like, yeah, you said you wanted to lend. I'm like, dude, I'm not your bitch. I'm not going to do your work for you. I'm not going to do your whole. I got so mad that finally I started like on a piece of paper drawing out the ideas. I'm like, this is nuts. I got money and I can't even find people to lend money to. I'm like, this is way harder than I thought. There's got to be a place out there that brings people with money together with people that need money, kind of like a dating site is for men and women. And well, I'm going to pause there, but that's what really opened up the next journey of my life in the technology space.
So what year was that approximately?
2021, 2022, around there.
Yeah. So you're right in the very beginning of crowdfunding, basically real estate crowdfunding, equity.
I didn't even know what that was at that time.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you were like right there when all that got created. Cause a lot of that came out of Dodd-Frank and, in 2008 and that whole mess. Really interesting, but keep going. So then that got you into obviously the private money side. And then what was it that you started to formulate to be able to give people kind of a template on being able to understand how to get money and then putting the two sides together?
Well, before I just kind of go into the whole story, I want to preface something. At that stage in my life, I had some pretty good successes. I had a lot of wins, but I had a lot of losses too. So I'd learned a lot through my losses. And one of the biggest things that I learned at this point is, if I really wanted to succeed, and I had some great mentors too. I also want to say, I was always really good at investing in myself with mentors and coaches and people that did or were doing what I wanted to be doing. So one of the things that I had learned is you have to give. You have to give deeply, okay? And without the expectation of anything in return. And not only do you have to give, you have to focus all your days and all of your time on solving somebody else's problem. Now, I had problems just like everybody did, but I was so focused on solving other people's problems. So remember, my problem at this stage is I need income, right? Because I'm kind of backing off of the flips. My tenants aren't paying. I got a bunch of cash, but that money needs to go to work for me because I don't want to spend my time doing this. I want my money working for me, and my money's not working for me. It's sitting in my specially designed whole life policies because that's what we did for, we do a lot of the infinite banking concept. So I've got tons of money sitting in that, and it's just, it's making money, but it's not making what I want. I need it out there working a second time. So I started thinking, okay, if I have this problem and I'm like just a small fish that wants to start lending, other people have to have this problem. And I started thinking about it. I said, I want to solve a really big problem. So on a piece of paper, I want you to envision this. It wasn't even a piece of paper. It was a napkin. I remember I'm in LA at a bar because I was speaking out there, and I grabbed a napkin. I'm talking to this guy, Steven, who's now the president of PMC. And I just draw a circle and I say, Steven, I say, here's the problem I see. I say, in the world, there are only two types of people, kind of like heads and tails on a quarter. There are people who have money. And guess what? Every one of those folks that I've met, and I've met a lot of them, they all have a problem, and that problem is simple. They want to make more. And then on the other side of the coin, the tails, I said, that's this other box over on this right side of the circle, are the people that need money. This is who I used to be. People need money to make money, okay? So that's their problem. Without money, they can't make any money. So I said, you got two people which represent every person on earth or in the United States. So now what we need to find a way to do is solve both of their problems in one place. And that was a circle. And I said, that's a community. And I drew two lines down the middle. So just think of you're separating a circle. And I said, the community's in the middle. And the community has technology. It has, notifications and simplicity. And I said, listen, I didn't create this. This is a dating site. I had in my younger years, I'd used dating sites. So I kind of knew how they worked. And I'm just like, okay, that was a brilliant idea. Somebody literally said, there are men and there are women and they want to go out and on dates and they don't want to have to go to the bar, spend $100, get to 2:00 in the morning and then maybe they meet somebody at that point. Just kidding, but not really. But anyway, like somebody created a dating site and it made that whole thing so much easier. And I said, why isn't there a dating site for money? This was my idea. I'm just like, this is so simple. Why hasn't anybody done this? So I went out, I searched the whole universe. I found places like Connected Investor and Ross, and I know them, but I'm like, they say they're private money, but they're not. They're a lead shop. For private lending, but it's really hard money. And I'm just like, there is no place where people meet each other and nobody tries to take anything in the middle. So I said, I'm going to create it. And that's what I did. And it was 4 years ago that idea happened. And I created just the technology. It was very expensive. I made lots and lots of mistakes because I'm not from the tech industry. And today we have the largest, and I got to now today say real private money. And what I mean by real private money is people just like me and you and all your audience, right? We're real private lenders. Like, we're just people. And we've got money somewhere, and we want that money to make a better return with less risk. Great. So banks, that's what we do. We're basically being the bank. We're mimicking what banks do. We're using their same risk mitigation profiles for underwriting, and we're just doing what they do, but we're doing it in our little community here called privatemoneyclub.com. And gosh, I kind of knew what I had created, though. So a lot of people create something and by mistake it blows up. I started Private Money Club I knew I had a huge idea, and I knew this idea would be sold someday. So I wrote, like Jim Carrey, I wrote a deposit ticket for $350 million, and it's still in my wallet. And I said, I'm going to sell this company for $350 million. And I've put it into the universe almost on a daily basis for 4 years. And that company has grown. There's lots of divisions of it now, but that's where it started, man.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about Private Money Club then. Is it easier? What is it like to get money from your investors than getting money from fintech lenders or, the big banks?
Well, it's faster. I can tell you that. So, like a private lender, and we have lots of education and lots of different things, but a private lender, they're all going to be different in terms of what they're going to want and what they're looking for. So the site allows them to dial in, hey, here, I'm a lender on the site, right? Because just like any social media site, you create a profile. And just so you all know, Private Money Club, there's a free option, and then there's a paid option. The paid option is for like serious people that want speed, agility, notifications, more storage. And then there's the free users, which are kind of just dipping their toe in. So the whole idea is the lenders and the borrowers are going to come together. They're going to come together on a deal, and that deal is going to have certain info, and then they're going to start communicating and discussing, okay, hey, can you give me this? Can you give me that? All right. And then they're going to give a kind of a deal sheet, like, hey, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to lend on your deal. You're offering 11%. I need 12 plus 3 points. Are you okay with that? Yes. I want to be in first position. My attorney's going to draft this up, or we could use your attorney, or we can go to Legal Corner on Private Money Club and use the attorneys that they have on there. So we kind of just tried to think of, well, what are the barriers and the learning curves people have to go through in order to learn how to be a good private lender or a good private borrower. And we basically just gave them that roadmap. And that's all it is. So the people on there are all different. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to lend 12 months or less. And then there's people that want to lend 3 years plus, and there's people that are okay making 10%. And there's other people that want to make 20. I mean, I can't really tell you there's one particular type because there's almost 10,000 people on there and hundreds of millions of dollars in deal flow that have taken place in there. So it's just what you're going to build relationships. That's really the sole thing. You're going to go on there. You're going to start putting your stuff out. You're going to start talking to people, and you're going to build relationships. And those relationships might stay with you with one deal, or they might stay with you for 1,000 deals, because I know when I lend to somebody, if I have a good experience, I want to lend to them again and again and again and again. And I don't want to try to go out and build new relationships if I got ones that are working where I can deploy my capital.
So in that case, what is it like? If I'm a borrower coming to the site, then what do I do? Launch a campaign, set up a information? Like, how does it work for me to take the—
Sure. I'll just kind of give you, sorry. I probably went down a rabbit hole that was out of that, but you come on and you're a borrower. Let's say you got a deal right now that you want to get funding for. So what you would do is you would post your deal in the deal section, and it's just a template. You just walk through. You can be as elaborate, put photos up, and put a whole. You can attach any document you want. So you should put a lot more than just photos and descriptions, kind of like what I mentioned. Like, tell people, what are the comps? What's your scope of work? What's your experience? Do you put together a whole proposal and learn from someone like you? Because you do. The one thing I will say. Let me just kind of deviate from what I was going there. Anybody that wants to have massive success, know what the lender is going to be looking for. The lender is going to be looking, what's in it for me today? What am I going to make today? But when am I going to get my money back, and how? So a lot of borrowers will post a deal on there because they need the money now, and they're only focused on the now. But let's say it's a flip, or let's say it's a BRRRR or a rental. What a lender wants to know, at least a good one, they're going to want to know, how do you plan on exiting this? And we don't want to hear foo-foo stuff like, oh, I'm gonna refi it at the bank. Okay, do you have a pre-approval? Have you worked with this bank before? Do you have a proposal for this bank? Can you show me that stuff? In other words, like, why do this twice? Just show me once what you've got from me to lend you, but also show me how you're going to get exit financing. Is your credit good? That's going to matter. Or do you have business credit? Are you able to go get institutional funding? Can you work with a bank on a commercial side? And, all these different things. So I want to know this stuff. Now, I'm not saying other lenders on there do, but if the borrower puts all that stuff on there and tells me, we're looking for 100,000, we're willing to pay 12%, first lien position, here's my attorney. Oh, and by the way, I've got a pre-approval with this bank that we've already got in place when this deal is done. I'm like, dude, I'm game. Now I'm like, yes. Because you've handled all of my objectives before I've even had to ask them. That's success.
So is Private Money Club, are you just funding real estate deals, or are you doing general entrepreneurs looking for money? Like, what kind of deals are you doing?
Yeah, great question. So right now it is just direct to deal. So we just actually yesterday got approval for our registered investment advisory, PMC Wealth, which is a completely different kind of registered investment advisory than the prior world I lived in. We created it to provide investment advice to people in the site, but we also created it so that syndications and private funds, Reg A's, Reg D's, and things of that nature can post their deals on the site. And it's only accredited investors. And then there's an advisory side where the advisors in PMC Wealth can give advice to people, maybe non-sophisticated accredited investors, on these more sophisticated deals, like a syndication deal or a private fund where there's a PPM and a subscription agreement. So we're expanding into that. So now that'll bring a lot more need. Because I'll tell you what the biggest problem I have with PMC, there are more lenders than there are borrowers, which is kind of unique, but it's just because of my other business with the infinite banking. We've got, 8,000 clients, that are being their own bank. So that all flows into PMC, and it just provides a nice, windfall of money. But the problem we've had is there's just not enough deals on there. Like, we used to have 100+ deals on the site at any time. We're down to like 40 right now. So it's a great opportunity if somebody's got deals, but that's where we're at today. Now, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but let's just say, like I said, remember, I'm building this to sell. The future right now was just changed with the Genius Act. The Genius Act, and I'm sorry going down this, but it's important. The Genius Act basically makes it so that banks have to find a way to provide depository capabilities for stable coins. Let's just keep it simple. Banks right now, because of their legacy software, and they're just so big that it's like turning literally a city, they can't pivot to adapt to the Genius Act. Well, what came to me, and it came to me because I've got some really smart people in my corner, is we've kind of already created this. We've almost created the mechanisms of a digital-ish bank with PMC, with BYOB, and all my companies. I literally have created a bank that isn't a bank. It's a private bank. And we started saying, all right, well, with PMC could be the mechanism for a bank to do lending operations on a fractional basis in the digital world on blockchain. So now what we're doing is we're really working very diligently with our development teams to create that universe where now different, lenders could lend not just on direct deal real estate or syndications or funds. They could actually lend on fractional deals that are split apart. And once you get there, and there's lots of regulations. This is the thing I will say is I have spent so much, probably close to $1 million on legal with SEC attorneys, because everything we've done has been regulatory, and every state has a different set of rules. So now that this brand new digital world is coming out, the regulation is still a bit grayish. So we're still learning that, trying to find good legal that understands it. But if you had a tractor, let's just say you had a company that needed tractors or forklifts, and they need to raise money to buy more because they want to expand. Well, there's nothing saying that Private Money Club couldn't be a resource for companies that need to raise money to buy equipment or buy inventory, or maybe just start a new division, an incubator type kind of division. But you could fractionalize it. It could kind of live in, on the blockchain, and all the transactions could be there. This is the world where we're going. Now, I know some of you are listening, you're like, this is way above my pay grade. It's really not. It's just too new, and I get it. I'm not even the expert in this, but just saying, like, that's the direction we're going right now. But I do see that Private Money Club in the near future, kind of like Craigslist, you'll be able to go on and pick what it is you're looking to raise money for or looking to lend money on. You want to lend money on a car or a tractor trailer or, a piece of farm equipment? Like, there'll be different sections for that. But today, as we sit here, September 2025, we are direct to deal real estate deals, and we're literally weeks away from being able to do syndications and private funds.
Chris, it's been great having you on, and I'm glad the timing is perfect because we've literally had a few episodes recently where we've been talking about stable coins and really getting our audience prepped to understand what's happening right now, because it's a big deal.
It's happening so fast.
It's happening really fast, and I love the fact that you recognize that before it's all been happening, and then you've basically been kind of many steps ahead with planning and doing this. And I love what you're building with Private Money Club and giving people the opportunity, especially in real estate now, and what will expand out to giving them the opportunity to get money. Because that's something that's passionate to me. Like, I don't understand why there's not one central place of capital. Like, you go to On Deck and they deal with revenue lending. Like, they all deal with these one-offs, and it's like, why can you not get it all in one place?
Dude, I love that. That's the problem we got to solve. I'm not there yet, but like, I love it. Like, that's big thinking and that's big problem solving, but you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So I love your part in that solution, because it's so important in what you've done in building a platform and bringing borrowers and bringing backers together the way that you have. I just think it's ingenious. So if people watching this, we just scratched the surface of what you're doing, of what's happening with Private Money Club. Where can they go to learn more from you, to get updates, and to learn more from Private Money Club as well?
Yeah, so I'll just give you two places to keep it simple. Obviously, privatemoneyclub.com. You can go on there. You can get on. There's lots of educational stuff. And the other places I'm all over social media, but YouTube is my biggest platform. Got like 1,300 videos, and they're super fun to watch. You just go to @the_Chris_Naugle, and it's Naugle. Once you type that into Google, like, the rest will all appear.
Perfect. Chris, thanks for coming on with us today.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So listen, if you're watching this, there's a couple things you should do. First of all, you really want to check out Private Money Club. So just go to privatemoneyclub.com. It's really easy. And there you can get the details and even start the process of actually raising money for your deal, or being the investor that's putting money in. As Chris said, what's happening now, there's this big shift where it used to be a lot of accredited investors and people that had a lot of money. And now we're starting to see that it's becoming easier for average everyday people that have money that want to see a return to be able to invest. So whichever side you're on, whether you're looking for money or looking to invest money, make sure you check it out at privatemoneyclub.com. But you also want to really go to Chris's website, which is chrisnaugle.com, and that's Naugle.com. Top left, take 30 seconds and just subscribe. His YouTube channel is linked right up there. You can subscribe to his other channels up there, and there you're able to find everything. Money School, you can learn more about Private Money Club. You're able to get his access to his books, merch, and so many other things. So make sure you check it out, privatemoneyclub.com and chrisnaugle.com as well, and that'll get you everything you need. But don't forget to subscribe to his social channels, because there's so much information that he teaches. And again, you're listening, hearing from a giver, right? He wants to just give. He wants to teach. He wants to educate. And if you've listened to what he said, he's staying so many steps ahead of what's going on. So if you're listening and following him, then you're staying ahead of what's going on. You're understanding trends before they develop. And most importantly, you're getting a really unique way to be able to get money that you need to invest in your projects and into your business in the future as well. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.